I was thinking about doing this Burning Man integration free workshop so that people could take the transformations that happen out there and make them real in their day-to-day lives. And you reached out and said, yep, I did that. And so you volunteered to share your story. What year was your first burn?
2001.
What was the theme that year?
Oh God, the 7 ages of man. And at that point, there were really only 7 rings, and they weren't alphabetical. This was before they locked that in. The last ring was called Oblivion, so there were a lot of Beyond Oblivion jokes. So just to put it in perspective, right, Burning Man is at the end of August through Labor Day weekend. So I went to my first Burning Man in 2001 and had my mind just blown open, just wonderful experience. Came home, and 1 week later, the Twin Towers exploded in a hail of airplanes. So there was this incredible juxtaposition for me on my reentry, integrating this amazing community that's out there at Burning Man and all of that experience, and then watching the news and knowing that the world I came back to would never be the same. So it was, yeah, it was trippy.
I had never put that together, how close those would be in time for burners. And what did happen out there? What are some moments that just blew your mind?
I remember at one point, I was there with my partner and some friends of hers that I didn't really know really well, and she didn't either, frankly. We were a weird conglomeration of folks camping together. But I also had brought one of my friends, one of my close friends, and my partner and I were pretty new in our relationship, like under a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so this friend that I brought, I had known for many years. And at one point, we got separated from the group. Like we all went out as a group. And then my friend Terry and I got separated from the group. And there was that moment of, oh, I'm in this huge event with all these crowds, and I've just gotten separated from my people. And that moment of kind of panic that you have, oh my God, what are we going to do? But I had been well prepared by some veterans who had gone before, and also just my own self-confidence. So we just sat down, and I was like, there's no way we're going to find them. There's just too many people. We're not going to find them. And my partner had been before, so I knew she would be okay. And she had warned me that this might happen. So there was just this moment where the switch flipped. And then Terry and I, instead of putting our heads together and being like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We looked out, and it was nighttime, and the freaking Disney electric light parade on acid was going by, right? Like this was their first time, and you look up and suddenly there's an art car and there's all this stuff, and that moment of I am inside the carnival and I am okay. I'm going to be just fine. And now I get to go have an adventure. I don't have to beeline back to camp and wait for my people to feel safe. I can just go out and enjoy this. So there was that moment of understanding the scale and the intensity of the event I was at. That all came through, but also feeling safe in it. And it was transformational, of course. It was really amazing. And we spent a good chunk, just the two of us that night, like just, of course, drifting from art to art and just goggling like slack-jawed yokels, because that's what you do.
Like that moment of fear. I'm separated from my pack. Am I safe? I'm in an unknown place. There's a lot of people. And it becomes this moment of incredible I don't want to put a negative connotation on this, but self-absorption, self-protection, self-observation. Like to me, am I safe? Fear. This is not going the way I want it to go. And then looking at the world and going, oh, but it's going. And I want to go too. Right. And so you become part of the world. You actually get to throw yourself into the world, and it turns out it is safe.
Yeah.
And it is magical and transformative.
And it happened that there was near where we got separated and where we were both going through this, there was an installation that you could sit on. There was a seat built into it. You were meant to sit on it. And it was all colored glass and mirrors and all kinds of things. So when you sat on it, the lights of the Playa would just be like, it was an acid trap or a tripper toy, whatever you want to call it out there. But so we had this place to sit and have this epiphany. We were sitting down on this art installation, watching and then having that also that meta moment of realizing that the artist who built this built it just for us right now.
Created for this moment.
This moment right here it is. And there were a lot of those moments throughout that week, coming up on an art installation that was essentially a bed covered in fur that looked like something out of a Dr. Seuss book, and wondering aloud, oh, this looks so cool. It would be so great to lay on this. And then having 3 people around me, only one of whom I knew, say, yeah, that's the way they built it. Climb on. And then climbing on the art and laying in this like fur covered thing. And I'd be like, oh, wow. And then another moment that really stands out for me is later in the week with my partner, who then crapped out. She was just like, I'm done. She was having her own journey. It was Sunday. It was the temple burn. And I said, I'm going to go watch the temple burn. She's like, yeah, go ahead, go. I'm just going to stay here. So I went out to the temple burn, got out there, and the dust storm came. So I'm feeling okay about that, not overwhelmed with that, but definitely affected by it. And there's no burn because they just have to wait until the dust storm passes. And a half hour turned into an hour, and an hour turned into 2 hours. And I just got tired of sitting in the dust waiting for this thing. So I decided to go home, back to camp. And Burning Man, by Sunday, there's not a lot of street signs. There's not a lot of the landmarks that you were using to orient yourself. And when you're in the dust storm, there's nothing but your innate sense of direction. And then every once in a while, you'll get a little landmark as the dust clears just a little bit, and you can go this way and then go this way and then go this way. And pretty soon you make it where you need to be. And at that point, I felt so comfortable and so grounded into the event and so confident that I rode my bike back to my camp in a dust storm. That was fine. It was just fine. In fact, it was fun. But what that brought home for me was that sense of energetic homing beacon. And I have really cultivated that every subsequent year. And it's something that we really drill into the newbies with Yes Please, which is the energy you put into building this camp is going to act as a homing beacon for you later on.
I love that.
And it's really true. Anecdotally, everyone I've ever talked to at Burning Man who's lost and doesn't know where their camp is didn't help build their camp.
What an interesting observation. What changed in you that never went back to the way it was?
A sense of expansiveness. Mm-hmm. And it expands every year I go out there. And this is going to be 22 years in a row. And it's part of the draw. There's this sense of, expansiveness is the only way I know how to describe it, where you're not containerized by your life. We put so much of our ego up on the walls and of our job and our friends and our apartment and whatever. It's out here and it defines us. And you get out there and literally the walls fall away. That sense of expansiveness in a very literal sense, that it is the Playa, it is the desert, is open there. The nearest vertical thing is either an art piece that's inspiring you or those mountains that are really far away. And that feeling of openness and expansiveness, I think, translates to a mental, emotional level. So I always come home feeling recharged and feeling a little bigger energetically than I left. And that sticks every time.
And how do you keep it alive? When we come back to the default world, in my experience, and part of what inspired this idea for the workshop, is people come back here and those same demands, those same external ego reinforcers, the places we get our identity, home, our partner, our job, our address, or whatever, that stuff starts to take hold again. And it can be difficult to remember that expansiveness, remember what opened on the Playa. How have you built that bridge?
It's different every time. And this is why people come home from Burning Man and blow up their lives, because they don't fit the old life anymore. And no matter what they do, they can't fit it and they just blow it up. And I am no exception to that. I have certainly had years where I came home and blew up my life. One year in particular, I came home and got a divorce. So the aforementioned partner is not my partner anymore and hasn't been for a long time. Or it was what inspired me to change careers, to get out of corporate life and be a massage therapist, which I've been doing for 10 years now. There are definitely those big dramatic moments. And I think shying away from those, when you get that message that you need to blow up your life, you can do it in a constructive way. And sometimes it's not so constructive, but it happens and it needs to happen. And we need those experiences that make us bigger, that make us not fit our life and not want to scrunch ourselves down into that life again. On a more subtle level, I think on a more like year to year level, when I don't need to blow up my life, I still expand my life. I still let it inspire me. I still let it. That first year, I didn't come home and blow up my life, but I did come home and learn how to fire dance.
Ah, okay.
Right? I was like, that's cool. I want to learn how to do that. And something like that, where you just come home and make some art, or just have a level of conversation with your loved ones that you were not previously having. So you go out on Playa, you open up to a stranger, and you come home and think, you know what? I should be opening up to my partner or my friends, or reaching back when they're reaching out, or just that kind of stuff that I don't think we're even necessarily conscious of doing, but allowing that space that's the stuff that happens.
The year of blowing up your life, corporate to massage therapy, that is a pretty stark contrast in career choice. And talk about an identity shift. What was the bomb that went off? What happened?
The bomb that went off was I'd been in corporate for 28 years and I was burnt. I was burnt out. I was already looking for another job within the corporate structure, but not my company. And I'd interviewed, I'd gotten in the top 3, and it would have been a pretty good jump up the ladder, but I didn't get the job. And then I got really sick. I got an intestinal thing that landed me in the hospital for a few days. It was a pretty good scare. It was nothing life-threatening, but just pretty gnarly and pretty good scare. And it's so funny because the year before, when I had gone to Burning Man, I had gotten this overwhelming message while I was on Playa to slow down. And I thought, okay, I can slow down. But I was still in the rat race when I was still in this corporate thing. And then that message just kept coming back to me. And it truly, I had gotten it on Playa in that way where you're just walking along and it just comes into your head and you're just like, slow down. Then I got really sick and I was like, oh, slow down. And I got through that, went back to work and got laid off. And I was like, oh, slow down. So every time I downshifted, I was getting a little message from my life. You are not slow enough. Slow down. And that particular year, my most profound thing that had happened to me on Playa had happened to me really being slow, really just like sitting out in the middle of the Playa in an art piece and like listening to the rhythm and the cacophony and the symphony of the Playa. Like it had just been one of those amazing moments. You know how it is when you're in a sweet spot, you just get that around you and it's fantastic. So after I got laid off, then I got the flu, got sick again. So my body was telling me, it was all these external signs are like, slow down. And so then I took 3 months to do nothing. I was recovering from the intestinal thing, from the hospitalization. I'd just gotten laid off. I really was just like, I need to just clean this off. And in those 3 months, I recognized that I was grieving my ego that had been propped up on corporate work. And what I also realized is I didn't miss it. I did not miss who it was. Like that, I was burnt out. That entire career path had been based on coming from really working class roots and my parents being like, we don't want you digging ditches for a living, go get a white collar job. And I did that, but that's not really what I wanted to be doing. So making that huge realization in that time, that entire career path was to fulfill some generational expectation and make my parents happy was really profound. And I don't regret doing it, of course, but it wasn't truly what I wanted to do. And I didn't even really know about massage. I actually just tripped into it. Like I said, I did nothing for 3 months, and then I knew I had another 3 months. I was basically drawn unemployment for 6 months and milking it. And I saw this thing. I was like, I've always given the friendly massage. Like, I'm good at it. And I like touch. Touch is my love language. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go to massage school and just learn how to do it formally. It was more like just stick another tool in your tool belt while you look for something else. But I fell in love with it. So it was all over.
Connecting this back to where the conversation started, where you're talking about going out to the playa and having that moment of being separated from your pack. And there's something about being separated from corporate life and the things that your parents told you, this is what's safe, this is the way, and your body saying no. And you took that 3 months and then you looked out. There's another world out there that's not about playing it safe, that's not about getting my identity from that. And it happened to be massage. It wasn't like, oh, I must be a massage therapist. It was, oh, here's an interesting path that you fell in love with. Some people are going out to the playa this year for the first time, and some are going out for the 22nd time.
22nd, yeah.
I've got 11 under my belt. No, sorry, 10 in 11 years under my belt. What advice would you give to either a virgin burner or a veteran burner who maybe hasn't seen 2 full decades?
The utilitarian advice is just be willing to be dirty. I see people really shooting themselves in the foot because they're just trying to stay clean. And you can't. Like, just be dirty. Go 3 days without a shower. It's fine. Like, it truly is. But also never lose that sense of wonder and awe. I think we just assume that newbies have it because it is so overwhelming and amazing. And I love watching that moment on people's faces when it's their first time. If you get to witness that, when they have that moment that I had where they're like, whoa, I am in this place, which has been described to me, but it really just comes in. It's a beautiful thing to watch. But I get that every year. I get that sensation every year, and I never let go of the awe of that. I think it will take you so many places. And then just a little personal mantra of mine, which is when you accept discomfort as a traveling companion, you go so many more wonderful places.